What is up, my YouTube family? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then it's just welcome to my channel and not welcome back. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button because you will not be disappointed unless, of course, your taste level is lacking, baby. It's definitely a you thing, okay? I hope you guys are well. I am feeling a lot better. I woke up today very congested up in here, drunk some peppermint tea, and that helped to clear out a lot of it. Can't taste anything. It's definitely giving struggle, but I'm on my way up, back to 100%. I feel like I'm hovering around 82%. And I need to be all the way together by this weekend, because if you were in my live, you remember I said that there was this girl that I wanted to be friends with, or like, you know, shoot a friend shot. Well, we have a little friend date scheduled for this weekend, so hopefully I feel well and that can happen. I will surely update y'all and let y'all know how that goes. Just one more time before I get started, thank you to everybody who wished me well. I really appreciate y'all. Y'all really be making me feel better. Like when I read y'all's positive comments, girl, I don't know, it just does something to me. But that's all I got for y'all before we get into today's case. If you saw Tuesday's video, then you already know what we're talking about. Miss Cindy James. There is a lot to unpack, a lot to uncover, and so I'm not gonna waste any more time. Let's get into it. Cynthia Elizabeth Hack was born June 12th of 1944 in British Columbia. Now, her mother Tilly is a stay-at-home mom that's caring for the 6 children that she shares with her husband, Otto, who has retired from the Canadian Armed Forces. And it is said that her father, Otto, he was very militant, okay? He believed in corporal punishment, but aside from that, their childhood was pretty normal, and they're the average middle-class family living in the suburbs. Now, Cynthia, who I'll refer to as Cindy from here on out, when she expresses her desire to grow up and become a nurse, to everybody it just makes sense. Her personality is very warm and inviting. She loves to take care of people, and while in nursing school, she meets Roy Makepeace, a psychiatrist that is 18 years older than her. But this age gap does not stop the two of them from exploring each other and eventually falling in love. They actually married just 5 months into dating. Cindy's parents are very supportive of her relationship with Roy, although they feel like with the age gap, they can't have too much in common aside from them both working in the medical field. Maybe they both like the same kind of music or share a favorite movie or two. But despite what her parents may think, there is something there. She loves Roy, and he loves her too. Now, although Roy is medically licensed in South Africa, where he is originally from, he struggles to secure a good job in Canada. He settles for a job as an assistant professor at the University of British Columbia, and Cindy gets herself a job working with preschool age children that have behavioral and emotional issues. Now, it is said that Cindy really loved children and wanted children of her own someday, but for whatever reason, her and Otto do not have children. Instead, they just get a home, they settle down, and unfortunately, over the years, their whirlwind romance sours, partly due to their schedules and both of their individual commitments to their careers. In July of 1982, after 16 years of marriage, Cindy decides to separate from her husband Roy and move out of their marital home. She claims that Roy has been physically abusive to her throughout the years of their marriage, but Roy said he only slapped her twice during the 16 years that the two of them were married, and that she is exaggerating. Whatever was going on in their home, Cindy is happy and relieved to be away from it, out on her own and in her own space, and she's very optimistic about the future and what that holds for her. Now, I don't want his marriage to work. He really loves her. Child, he did not get married to get divorced, and he does not want to give up on their union, but he is willing to allow her to have her space and try to work his way back and rekindle their romance in the meantime. And Cindy is not completely opposed to them potentially working out their marriage. She does agree to give him a chance. So instead of finalizing their divorce, they just remain separated, and the two of them continue to see each other every now and then. With a bit of space between them and Otto actively showing her how much he wants their marriage, Cindy is actually very happy. But her joy is very short-lived because 3 months into her living on her own, very strange things begin to happen. Now, it starts with these very strange phone calls where the person on the other end does not say anything. She'll pick up, she'll say hello multiple times, and they do not respond. Now, back in the early 80s, it was a lot more difficult to trace a phone call. There was no caller ID, and I don't think they had star 69 quite yet. The caller goes from being silent to whispering her name when he calls. And the voice of the caller is one that she cannot put a finger on. She does not recognize it at all. And sometimes, he would just call and breathe heavy on the line. This is the first time that Cindy has ever lived alone, and this is terrifying. Once these phone calls become a regular occurrence, happening almost every other day, she decides to go to the police and see what they can do about it. Now, a report is made, but beyond that, they tell her there's really nothing else that they can do. So the calls continue, and then things begin to escalate. One evening, Cindy is home alone, relaxing, and then she hears what she believes to be someone trying to access her home from the back door. When she goes to the window to look, she can see a shadowy figure, but whoever it is quickly runs away. She reports this to the police, as well as another instance that takes place shortly after where someone throws a rock through her window. Again, officers take the report and let her know that, beyond that, there is nothing else that they can do. A week after the rock incident, she returns home to find that while she was gone, somebody had entered her home and slashed her pillowcase. Nothing is taken from the home, nothing else is disturbed or vandalized, and she had actually been home for quite some time before she even realized that the pillowcase had been slashed. It wasn't until she was getting ready to go to bed that she pulled back the covers and saw it. With this incident, she demands that an officer is dispatched to her home and some sort of action is taken. Officer Pat McBride is dispatched there. He does a walkthrough of the home to make sure that whoever had done this is not like hiding in the closet, girl, or underneath her bed, lurking inside the home somewhere in a dark corner, waiting on a moment to strike. He's also there to collect any evidence, if there is any to collect. He makes a note of everything that Cindy reports, and he's very empathetic toward her. Cindy seems very sweet, and she just does not deserve to be harassed like this. He tries his best to ensure her that she's safe, that there's nobody inside the house, all the windows are locked, but this does very little to soothe her, which I get, because having somebody come into your home, I'm sure is very violating. Like, how did you get in the first place? What if they come back while she's asleep? And according to her, she has no clue who this person could be or why she'd be harassed like this. Officer McBride asks her questions about her ex-husband, and she is very adamant that she does not believe Roy is capable of this, that he would do anything like this. Furthermore, Roy is the one that insisted that she call police and demand an officer actually come out this time. But as a seasoned officer, Officer McBride is not convinced that it's not Roy. Now, so the officer, it makes sense that it could be. Like, maybe he's trying to scare you to come back home. Maybe he's upset that you've left and he's exacting revenge. He leaves not at all convinced that it is not Roy. He gives her some tips on how to be a little bit more safe and how to move with a bit more diligence, and tells Cindy before he leaves to call again if she has any more concerns or incidents. And he will definitely be hearing from Cindy a lot more because, honey, what she has experienced so far is just the tip of the iceberg. The calls continue and are progressively becoming creepier. The voice is now at a regular tone, still unrecognizable, and is almost daily. One evening, the caller says something that makes her feel like they can see her, like they're watching her, and she hangs up the phone, goes to close her blinds. Her phone rings again, and it's the caller again, telling her that there is no use in trying to hide because they can always see her, and lets her know that she is now standing in her living room, which she is. Over the coming months, things escalate, and Cindy makes several reports to police claiming that someone has attempted to open her windows and her doors while she was home alone at night, that she had seen someone lurking outside of her home, and then she finally gets a situation where she can present some physical evidence. A note had been left outside on her front porch, and it was one of those notes where the letters were like cut out of a magazine to spell out the message, kind of like in the movies. I'll post a picture. There is a report made when the lights outside of her home were all smashed, and one night her phone lines had been cut. As time goes on, these things are becoming more bizarre and more frequent. One morning, she comes out of her front door to find 3 dead cats scattered across her lawn. And all of these things had happened within a 3-month period. I don't know why she didn't move, because child, when I tell you I would have gotten my things and gone, but she does not. She remains there and reports all of the things to the police. She's also made all of her friends and family aware that somebody is stalking her. Now, more often than not, Officer McBride is the one that is dispatched to respond to her calls. He feels a lot of sympathy for her. He wants to help her, and as much time as he's spending around her house, they are beginning to get to know each other, and over time, Cindy becomes a bit more interested in Officer McBride than she is her estranged husband, Roy. Officer McBride even comes by to install deadbolt locks on Cindy's door as a personal favor to her. The more time they're spending together, the more they grow to like each other, and eventually they start dating. He even decides to move into the house with her so he can keep an eye on things and keep her safe. Now, Roy is not happy when he learns of this because according to him, they're supposed to be working on their marriage. But even with Roy not being happy about Cindy's new love interest in her apparently moving on, the two of them remain cordial and in contact. Now, one day, Officer McBride, aka Pat, is relaxing at the house. It's a normal night until he hears some noise out back behind the house, and he goes out to investigate. He finds Roy in the alleyway behind the house with 2 handguns and is like, "What are you doing?" Roy claims that he is staked out back there just in case something goes on, okay? He is securing the premises, keeping Cindy safe, and keeping him safe too, quiet as it's kept. But Pat is not buying it because he still believes that the person that is stalking and harassing Cindy is Roy. According to him, he had just caught Roy in the act. After Roy is spotted back there, he leaves without incident. And over the next several months, Cindy continues to receive these very strange letters with disturbing images and cutout letters with disturbing messages. More strange phone calls. One morning she goes to her car and there's a cutout image of a decomposing body stuffed underneath her windshield wiper. Her phone line is cut several more times. And unfortunately, there are never any clues left behind as to who is responsible for this. It's just a vicious cycle of harassment, police report, nothing we can really do. Harassment, police report, yeah, nothing we can really do. It's not long before Pat, aka Officer McBride, and Cindy decide to end their relationship and he moves out of the house. All of the harassment continues, and Cindy becomes a bit more desperate to put something in place that will help her catch this person and find out who they are. She has her telephone company install a wiretap on her phone, hoping that they could pinpoint a location of where the calls are coming from. The problem with that is oftentimes the calls are not long enough. There are very few phone calls where they're able to get a location, and when they are, it shows a location on the outskirts of Vancouver. So they're not that far away because she herself is in Vancouver. Now, Cindy fears that going through the trouble of moving would be useless because the stalker obviously is watching her. The problem is not where she is. So wherever she goes, they'll obviously follow her. So she decides to stay where she is, and her stalker continues to litter her home with creepy messages and pictures of deceased bodies. And then she receives a message that simply says, "Soon, Cindy." And this is very, very creepy because what's happening soon? On January 27th of 1983, a friend of Cindy's by the name of Agnes has plans to stop by and spend time with Cindy. When she arrives, she is horrified to find Cindy laid out on the floor of her garage. She has scrapes, cuts, she's bleeding, and there's a black nylon stocking wrapped tightly around her neck. And Cindy appears to just now be regaining consciousness. Her friend Agnes helps her to her feet, brings her inside the house, and dials 911. Now, Cindy recalls being home alone when she hears a knock at the back door and opening it to a man who grabs her, drags her to the garage where there was another assailant waiting, and the 2 men attack her. One had a knife, the other man was choking her. She does her best to fight back, but ultimately ultimately she passes out, and she also reports that the man with the knife had attempted to SA her with the knife, like, you know, cut her down there. Officers make note of over a dozen cuts to her hands, her arms, and her legs. But the Vancouver Police Department are a bit skeptical of her story. And once she is checked out, they don't find any signs of her being cut down there. So it's like, what's going on here? All of the cuts that she had received were very superficial, and she had no signs of being sexually mutilated in any kind of way. And because they have their doubts now, they ask her to take a polygraph test, and she agrees to take it, but she fails. She offers to take it again, and the results of the second test are no different than the ones of the first. Now, at this point, one could reasonably debate the validity of these lie detector tests, but police believe that she is not being completely honest and forthcoming with all of the information. And later, Cindy explains that she had lied on the polygraph test. She explains to them that she was actually too afraid to tell the full truth because she had recognized one of the men who had attacked her, and she was afraid that he would come back and finish her off or harm her family next if she had identified him to the police. And they don't buy this either. They think that this too is a lie. Now, after this attack, Cindy decides that it is time to move out of that house, and she returns to her marital home. But she and Roy don't live together. He allows her to have the marital home, and he finds somewhere else to live. And just as she had suspected that it would, the harassment just follows her, beginning with the calls and then the letters. Cindy moves to another location, and the calls continue there. And then she moves a fourth time in under a year and still cannot escape her stalker. Now, one morning, she comes outside and is horrified. There are dead cats, multiple dead cats, hanging from the trees in her front yard by rope. There's also a note that reads, "You're next." This way y'all got Ring cameras and all of that now, child. Because back in the day, things were crazy. She files yet another police report with the Vancouver Police Department, and again, they suspect that this is the work of Roy, and she again insists that it is not, that he's not capable of something like this. He would not do this. But regardless of what she says, he is their number one person of interest. Now, Cindy feels like they're not doing what they need to do as a police department, okay? She is telling them that it is not Roy, but they insist on worrying about the wrong person. She solicits the help of our boy from the last video, Ozzy, the private investigator, to help her get to the bottom of this. Ozzy gets her a little walkie-talkie for them to communicate on, and he gets right to work, hoping to catch her tormentor in the act. On January 30th of 1984, Ozzy gets a buzz on his walkie and hears a bunch of commotion coming from Cindy's end. He rushes over to her house. He gets there in 15 minutes, and there is no response on his walkie from her. She is not answering the door. He has to kick it down, and inside he finds her on the floor unconscious with a knife wound to her hand and another strange note beside her that says, "Now you must die, cunt." There is also a black nylon stocking, just like the one in the first incident, tied tightly around her neck. Now, when he gets her to wake up, regain consciousness, she doesn't remember anything about the attack. She has a head injury, so they deduce that she had been hit with some sort of object. And she also has these needle marks in her arm. Now, although she has the needle marks, a toxicology report reveals that there was no sign of any kind of toxins, any kind of poison in her system, so it is unlikely that she had actually been injected with anything. Responding officers had also noted that and found it interesting that there were no signs of forced entry into the home. All of her windows were locked, her doors were locked, aside from the one that Ozzy had kicked off the hinges. So how were they able to get in? And did they lock the door on their way out? They suspect that the person had to have been Roy. Both incidences, he has a solid alibi that checks out. He's also very cooperative with police officers. He's not nervous to talk to them at all. He even reveals to them that he's also received strange phone calls from who he believes to be her stalker and provides them 2 voicemails that were left by this person. He also offers up them an alternative theory so they can stop looking at him as a suspect. He reminds them that Cindy works with very troubled children. Maybe one of them did it. Remind you, these are preschool children, though, that she worked with. Now, when he is reminded of that, he's like, well, maybe it's the family members of some of these troubled children. You never know. He also tells them that they should look at her father, Otto, because back in the day, Otto was very strict as a parent and was borderline abusive, that he believed in corporal punishment and he used to get a little rough with the children. They assure him that they'll look into both of those suggestions and yeah, keep their eyes open for those people. But in the meantime, they're really still keeping their eye on him. They believe him to be the one behind this, no doubt. Several months later in the summer of '84, Cindy arrives home to find her back door wide open. Inside of her home, her dog had been beaten and tied to a table with a rope. The dog is still alive. He's just pretty tied up. And it is the same exact rope that was used to hang the kittens from the tree out front. There's also another time shortly after this that she returns home to find a birthday letter, this time inside of her kitchen, which all of the letters before this had been left on the front door. And not only that, there was also a cigarette butt left there in her ashtray, and she smoked cigarettes, but not that particular brand of cigarette. Those closest to Cindy grow extremely concerned about her well-being. This has now been going on for 2 years. It is very obvious to them that the stalking has taken a huge toll on her mentally and physically. She's lost a significant amount of weight. She looks tired and stressed out all of the time, and she isn't even acting like her normal self. Her entire demeanor has changed. The dog incident is not the only big thing that takes place over the summer. In July, police receive yet another phone call from Cindy, but this call does not come from her home. Cindy had stumbled to a stranger's house asking for help after waking up in a ditch on the side of the road with no idea of where she was or how she had gotten there. And she also has that same black nylon stocking tied tightly around her neck. In addition to that, several more needle marks in her arm. She tells the officers that the last thing that she remembers is being out taking a walk when a bearded man pulls up alongside her with a blonde woman on the passenger side in a green van asking for directions. Next thing she knows, she's waking up in the ditch and she is 6 miles away from her home. She is again tested, and just like before, there are no toxins found inside of her system. And at this point, honey, she is not the only one that is stressed out and tired, okay? The local police department is stressed out and tired as well. They have spent so much time, money, resources trying to help her out. They've even staked outside of her home to try to catch the stalker in the act. And with this, they question whether or not Cindy is actually being stalked. Maybe she is her own stalker. Maybe she is doing all of this to herself. Now, Ozzy has not been able to catch anyone in the act either. He's staked outside of her home. He's followed her, but he is not convinced that Cindy is staging everything on her own. He's still willing to give sis the benefit of the doubt. So he suggests to Cindy that she undergoes hypnosis to try to get some more details. Maybe that'll help them get to the bottom of what is going on, whatever it may be. Cindy agrees to go under hypnosis, and in one session, she says that she'd once witnessed a double murder, but she is unable to give any details about it at all. Now, when she wakes up, they remind her or tell her what she has said, and she's like, I did not witness a double murder, and I don't know why I would have said that under hypnosis. Now, she has another session, and in this one, she says that her ex-husband had killed and dismembered a young couple when they were on vacation in 1981, right before the two of them had separated. So did she really witness a double murder? And her conscious mind is like suppressing the images or the memories. And now, one of her sisters had attended that same trip with her and Roy, and the sister says nothing of the sort had happened. There was no way that this could have happened. Another year goes by, putting us in the summer of 1985, and Cindy is extremely stressed out, burnt out, all of the things, child, because the stalking has continued. The harassment has not let up. And at this point, she is tired. and desperate, and she takes an entire bottle of painkillers. She survives this, and when she is discharged from the hospital, she promises them that she'll go to live with a brother of hers so he can keep an eye on her, but instead she actually returns home, and of course the stalking continues. The calls, the letters, the disturbing packages. One day she is delivered a large makeup case in the mail, but when she opens it up, it is filled with rotting meat. On 3 separate occasions, someone attempts to set fire to her property, and during one of these instances, her best friend and the best friend's husband have moved into her home to try to keep her safe and just look after her, because at that point she was too afraid to live alone, but she did want to stay at her house. And one night she runs to the couple's room screaming her head off, telling them that she hears a noise coming from downstairs. Mr. Best Friend gets up to investigate. He hears the noise too. When he goes downstairs, he finds that the whole basement has been set on fire. Now, a thorough investigation is done because they don't play about arson, baby. And it is determined that this fire was in fact set inside of the house. So if none of them had set the fire, then that means someone would have had to break into the home and set the fire. But it was also noted that there were no signs of forced entry. All of the windows and doors were locked. There would have had to be a real polite arsonist, baby. Come in, set the fire, and leave. Lock the door on their way out. Oh no, they could have been trying to lock them in there so they die. Now, for the Vancouver Police Department, this fire is the last straw. They are 100% fed up and convinced that Cindy is staging all of this herself. Now, either something had really happened, and because she did not get the response that she wanted from police in the very beginning, maybe with the phone calls, she is now staging all of these elaborate events to prove a point, or no one has ever harassed her. None of this has actually happened, and she's been staging everything this entire time for whatever reason. They begin considering a mental health issue that she may be experiencing as a possible explanation for all of this, and they decide to have her admitted and evaluated at a psychiatric facility. And during her stay, she makes a very interesting journal entry that reads, "I still feel suicide is my best option in an unbearable situation, and as soon as I get out of here, I will carry out my plan." But mama does not get out there anytime soon. They keep her there. I saw reports say 7 weeks. I saw reports say 10 weeks. So between 7 to 10 weeks, maybe even 11. They keep her there at the psychiatric hospital. The doctors that evaluate her during this time report that they believe that she was sending all of the letters to herself, that she was staging all of the antics, and that she was fabricating the phone calls. However, they do get her on a treatment plan, which she is receptive of, and once she's in a good space where she seems a bit more mentally and emotionally stable, she's discharged to return to her life, and she's doing really good. She returns to her job, and she does her best to return to life as normal. But a couple of months after her release in December of 1985, she goes on her lunch break from work and does not return. Instead, she is found wandering the area without her coat and without her shoes on. And mind you, it is the dead of winter in Vancouver. When she is approached, she is completely disoriented. She has a black nylon stocking tied around her neck. She has more clean needle marks in her arm. And police, of course, believe that she is suffering some sort of break from reality. They tell her that she has a decision to make at this point. She either accept mental help and keep up with her treatments, or they haul her off to jail. They press criminal charges against her for wasting their time and resources, which I think is kind of weird of them. If you think somebody has a break from reality and they are mentally unwell, like how do you expect somebody to make a sound decision in that state of mind? However, maybe I'm not giving Cindy enough credit because she does make the sound decision to seek help, although she does refuse to admit that she has staged any of this herself. Now, in the beginning, the majority of the people who knew Cindy completely believed that she was being stalked, harassed, and everything that she was saying was true. And many also believed her stalker to be Roy, undoubtedly. But now most people believe that she is mentally unwell. Some believe that she's always been mentally unwell and it's just now manifesting, and she's been behind all of this. And some people still believe that she is being stalked and tormented and this stalker has driven her to this point of mental unwellness. Slowly, her friends begin distancing themselves from her, feeling that it was just too much. It had been going on for too long, and it was just too taxing. Emotionally taxing being her friend. And with nearly 100 police reports, the Vancouver Police Department decides to stop taking reports from her of this nature. They were pretty fed up as well. Cindy's parents and her siblings, regardless of what they believe to be true, they stand by her side and continue to support her and do their best with this very bizarre situation. Cindy has noticed, of course, all of the people falling back from her and that a lot of people do not believe her. And this entire time, she has maintained that Roy could not possibly be behind this. But now this changes, and she is expressing to anybody who will listen to her still that she may have been wrong and that Roy may actually be the person harassing and stalking her. And those people close to her really just see it as a desperate attempt to clear her name and make sure that they too don't withdraw their support and believe that she is the one behind all of this. Now, unfortunately for Cindy, she also burns the bridge with her employer and is let go from her job. They tried to be as flexible and as understanding as possible, but enough had become enough. And this sends her into a deep depression, which ultimately results in her being once again admitted into a psychiatric hospital. She is monitored around the clock to make sure she does not attempt to harm herself and is, of course, provided treatment. And during her stay, she shows significant improvement. She fully complies with the treatment plan. She looks and sounds a lot more healthy, both mentally and physically, and eventually gets to a place where they feel that she is healthy enough to live on her own, so she is released. Now, after her release, she changes her name to Cindy James, dropping Roy's last name of Makepeace, but not wanting to return to her maiden name. Mama wanted a fresh start. And in August of 1987, she gets a new great job that she loves at Richmond General Hospital. She buys herself a new home, and the harassment has seemingly ceased. Over the next 2 years, she is doing extremely well. There were only 2 incidents that she reported, one in which her home's alarm system had been triggered by a window being broken out of her home. And 3 days after that, she had reported to police that her light bulbs had been loosened, but that was it. For the most part, things have been smooth sailing and no more reports have been made. She's been living very peacefully, normally, loving her job, making new friends, and all is well. Now, by May of 1989, she had been working consistently and she was ready for a vacation. She puts in 5 days off from her job. She spends May 26th running errands all day. She cashes her check, she pays some bills, she goes and picks up a birthday gift for the child of one of her friends. She goes to a beauty salon and gets a complete makeover because that evening she is planned to have friends over for a game night. But before going home, she stops by a grocery store to pick up some groceries because, you know, if you're having friends over, you gotta feed them or at least give them something to drink. But that evening when her friends arrive to her house, there is not an answer to their knocks. Cindy is not there and her car is not in the driveway. No one had actually heard from her since earlier that day, and child, this predates cell phone, so there was no way to contact her wherever she is. Her friends and family become extremely concerned when she does not return to her home at all that night, and especially once her car is found abandoned in the grocery store parking lot. There's blood on the driver's side door, but her purse, including her wallet, is still inside the car. All of the groceries that she had purchased are inside the car, as well as the birthday gift for the child, but no sign of Cindy. They report her disappearance to police, who are not convinced that this is not another stage production of Cindy's, but they make the report still and attempt to find her. Almost 2 weeks later, Cindy is found. A maintenance worker finds her laying on her side on the ground near an abandoned house about a mile away from where her car was found. Now, according to the maintenance man, her face was completely black and had looked to be punched in. Cindy is found fully clothed. There is a blue jacket found near her that was believed to belong to her, but later discovered that it does not. Her hands and feet are bound tightly behind her back, and she is of course deceased. She was 44 years old. An autopsy notes that there were needle marks in her arms, but this time the toxicology report does not come back clean. There was morphine and excessive amount of an anxiety medicine, and also an excessive amount of a prescription strength sleep aid, and her cause of death is determined to have been an accidental overdose at first, and then it is changed to be a result of an unknown event. Now, despite people believing that she was responsible for all of the previous incidences, many people don't believe that this is something she did or could have possibly done to herself. The way her hands and feet are so tightly folded back and bound behind her back seems impossible for her to have done on her own, especially after injecting herself with 10 times the lethal dose of morphine along with ingesting the other drugs. She would have had to have done all of that before tying herself up. But as far as the police are concerned, this was her last and final stunt. During the inquest into her death, they consult with an expert witness who says that she would have had to physically injure herself, injected the morphine, taken the other pills, and would have had a solid 15 minutes to get herself all tied up before being knocked out by the drugs, which they estimate would have taken her 3 to 5 minutes, especially if she was determined to make it look like someone had done this to her. And her family is not buying it. They believe that she was very obviously attacked by somebody else, and the people who had doubted her and believed that she had done all the things before to herself are now thinking maybe she didn't do any of this to herself. Maybe she really had a crazed stalker after her who had finally caught up to her. Furthermore, it just does not make sense to them for her to have done this now. She's been on the straight and narrow for a while. She has gotten her life completely on track and has been doing well for nearly 2 years. And why on this day when she has plans? Police believe for dramatic effect. Unfortunately, over the years, Cindy had garnered herself a reputation with the Vancouver Police Department, and I'm not at all saying that it's okay. I'm just saying this is where they were. They really weren't interested in doing much of an investigation, which is terrible. No thorough homicide investigation is done because, according to them, as far as they're concerned, there was no homicide. They believe that she had done this to prove a point, to make people believe that she was not making it up all these years and that someone was really, truly out to get her, and maybe to make people even feel bad for doubting her in the first place. According to them, they believe that she made it look extremely difficult to have pulled off herself on purpose so that people would believe that she wasn't lying this whole time. Having a very normal day, cashing her check, running errands, getting the birthday gift, the groceries in the car, they feel all play a part in making her story or her last stunt look very real and believable, and that everything was calculated, which her family thinks is more of a reason to believe the opposite. They don't believe she would have gotten a makeover, ran errands, and did all of this just to do this to herself later. And as her father has made mention of, if she was the one who had ingested all of these pills, like, where are the bottles? There was no syringe. Where's the syringe? Whose jacket is this? If she had done the drugs at point A and then transport herself to point B, that just cuts down on her time. Unfortunately, though, after 6.5 years of them responding to her harassment claims, the police just didn't care anymore. And so her case is closed as far as they are concerned. And I want to know your thoughts. Did Cindy do all of this to herself? Did she do some of it to herself? Do you believe that she had a killer who got away with murder? I want to know. Let me know your thoughts down below. Please like the video before you go. Subscribe if you have not. As always, I appreciate you so much for spending your time with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace. How my hair was so long and my locks are so little is perplexing. We have company again today back there. But I woke up today with a bunch of nasal congestion. Where is the I-O-N? After 16 years of marriage, Cindy decides, okay, no. So the calls continue and then things escalate. Okay, no. And just 1 week after this rock incident, she returns home to her, returns home to her home, girl. Of course. She returns to her home to find that her pillowcase. Ouch. Did I say furthermore? Furthermore, Furthermore, Roy is the one who insisted that she call police. But as a he's probably trying to. Now, one night, Roy is chilling at the house. Oh no, not Roy. What's his name? And opening it. I can't talk. I'm sick. Once she is, what's the word when you evaluated at the hospital? Maybe I could just say evaluated at the hospital, huh? Evaluated at the hospital. It is no, I don't like that. Bella said, I ain't a killer, but don't push me. Bella, what's your problem? You're not going out there to harass those people. Those people are minding their business. And the 2 years have barely. And she's not even acting like her normer. I can't talk. That she loves working as a nurse at at Richmond General Hospital. But that evening when she returned, no, I want some hot sauce. But that evening when she returns home, that's not what she did. Why do I keep saying that?